Welcome. Read One Communications presents The Scholar's Chair. Our interview is with researcher Samira Saidi. Our topic, God's gift of rationality from a Quranic perspective. A little bit. Our topic is Allah's gift of rationality from a Quranic perspective, right? And we've kind of pre-programmed our program a little bit. So I'd like to ask the first question: do you believe rationality is a gift from God in religion? Because most people think about religion as kind of spooky and airy and very kind of otherworldly. But we're saying that maybe transcendent, but we are rational people here utilizing religion to enhance that. Would you agree or no?
I would say that, well, for me personally, and I believe that it's the same for people who know the Quran, that it's, first it's addressed to everyone, mm-hmm. and in a specific way to people who are endowed with understanding, with intelligence, with reason, with wisdom. I mean, it's all about wisdom, and it's all about reason, rationality. I mean, it's not something spooky as people believe it to be. Even I would say that rationality is visible all through the Quran. And the word reason is used a lot of times all through the Quran, and even Allah addresses the humankind as, oh, you people of intelligence, people of understanding, people who understand, people of reason. So it's all about rationality. Mm-hmm. So we cannot say that it's not about rationality or about science and something that we can understand.
But I wanted to ask you a further question. Why do you think it is important that God created this creature rational, this human creature? Why do you think it's important?
He created us as rational. Mm-hmm. and asks from us to believe in him, even though we cannot see him.
Yes.
But at the same time, he does not command us to believe blindly, mm-hmm. in him. Mm-hmm. Without using our reason one more time. I would say that he requires our active participation. The active participation of our critical mind. Mm-hmm. And a thorough analysis of the Quranic text. He does not just tell us, okay, you have to believe. Mm-hmm. It's we have to believe at the spiritual level, but as well as the scientific levels. And that's very important because he addresses us as astrophysicians, as doctors, as biologists, archaeologists, anthropologists, linguists. Mm-hmm. He as navigators also, because there are many verses referring to the maritime world and to archaeology and to all the fields that we can find in our human lives, on every day.
That's very interesting. How can Allah be worshipped rationally, and does the Quran offer detailed guidance for this?
How can
God be worshipped rationally?
Let's say that when Allah asks from us to believe in him, he asks from us to understand that all the universe that he has created is based on physics, on mathematics, it's a very scientific. It's a very scientific creation. Yes. If you remove 1 0, everything would blow up.
Yes.
If you add 1 0, everything would blow up. Mm-hmm. It's all about our understanding of our life around us. it's not merely a text that is supposed to tell us about the story of the prophets, or which requires from us to believe without trying to understand why we should believe and why we should believe in him.
Yeah.
And to tell you the truth, when I started working on the Quran, I was more focused on the story of the prophets. And it's through the story of the prophets that I started to understand a lot of verses, and to understand the content of the Quranic verses at a certain level. And from that time, and from this understanding of the stories of the prophets, I came to make researches at another level, which was about geography, about the maritime world I was telling you about, and which is so important because it is at a certain level through the maritime world that I have been able to understand certain Quranic verses which prove that the natives of America had received the message, because it was a link. I mean, I started working on the maritime exchanges between peoples in ancient times, because I just couldn't understand why in the Quran Allah would say that he sent the message to all the worlds. I said, okay, and how about the natives of America? I was like discussing with Allah about, okay, you are teaching me, when you are talking to me directly through the Quran. I consider it as being addressed to me as a human being, and I each time I ask something, I would say, okay, Allah, okay, you are saying this and that, and how about the natives of America? You know, it was it was a kind of discussion. Yes, it was a conversation between Allah and me, and I would even say that the Quran formed my personality, my unsubmitted personality, and maybe my rebellious personality, because for me, if Allah tells me you have to think, you have to reason, you have to analyze, I say, okay, you are Allah. Why would I put into question your words? But if you say that I can do it, okay, let's do it. So I started working on it, and I say, okay, I want an answer about the natives of America. And as long as Allah says in the Quran that I can criticize his text, then
yes.
I decided to criticize all the texts that I read, aside from the Quran. And it was, I mean, it was amazing. I mean, it was amazing because it was like a conversation. And at the same time, okay, I said, okay, I'm going to take a look at the other books, and I'm going to try to find a way to you and to your words and to what you said. You said that this Quran is for the words. I want to know why. According to what we were taught in official manuals of history, why the natives of America had not heard about Muhammad والسلام, peace be upon him, and about Jesus والسلام, and about his mother السلام. So this intellectual or spiritual conversation with God, with Allah, led me to anthropology, to archaeology, to sciences like referring to the DNA, because DNA has proved that the natives of America are linked to the Arab peoples and to the Black African peoples, and this is very important, because it's through this rationality of the Quran that I started to look for the truth, and to really get rid of this subjectivity that we have been taught about the history of the New World, of the so-called New World.
That's excellent, and you almost answered the third question, and that is that does the Quran offers humanity guidance in the modern world, and you are stating that the Quran is asking us as human beings to investigate the world around us, even internally, what's going on in our own bodies. It asks us to examine those. in the sake of refining ourselves. So I concur with your idea. Do you agree that the Quran does offer us a modern pathway to understanding?
Oh, of course. And well, first of all, the Quran is universal.
Yeah, are you saying universal?
And
saying
if we consider it,
are you saying the Quran?
Sorry?
You're saying the Quran is universal?
Yes, it is universal, and at the same time, it's for all the peoples from the first, from Adam to the last, to his last descendant on earth.
Yeah.
And I would even say that when you read the Quran, it addresses you as a modern man or a modern woman. And even in a few generations, you would be considered as belonging to an ancient period of time. Okay, and the future generations will read it differently because they would have access to a much better knowledge, much better. They would have a much higher technology, and they would understand what we haven't been able to understand, and what the ancients haven't been able to understand. And so I consider it as being for everyone and for each period of time. And when you read, for example, Surah An-Naml, the surah about the ant and about the story of Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam, you would realize that there are certain information that are present in this surah that refer to technology that we have not today, but that people would be able to have in a few generations, maybe tomorrow, maybe in 100 years. And but we have information regarding, for example, internet in this surah, because at the very same second you receive a message and you answer it.
Yes.
And this is something that did not, that someone who lived 100 years ago or even less wouldn't have been able to understand.
Yeah.
So we understand it according to the technology that we reach.
Yeah. Yes. 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 It's interesting. I can say that the Quran offers us such guidance. It is most definitely a way of life that is going to open up to our generations to the future. I'm looking forward to what my grandson has to think about it. I'm very interested in knowing whether you have an opinion about the Prophet Muhammad as being a human example in modern terms.
You know, Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is in a certain way, a Quran himself, because what is being taught in the Quran is seen underlined by his personality and by his behaviors with others. His level of knowledge, his wisdom, the way he treats peoples, whether they are friends or enemies, and how he treated women. And this is very important because usually people, well, in manuals of history, have a very false image of women in Islam. And if you take a look at the real version of history, you realize that Islam, the Quran, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, our prophet, our messenger, taught us how to behave with everyone. He taught people how to behave with their children, with their wives, with their husbands, with everyone at each and every level. So he was at the same time giving us certain scientific information, even if in the hadith if you read certain ahadith, you would realize that he was giving us scientific information that were in the middle of the oceans, that were not supposed to be known by people, and certainly not by someone who lived at his time.
Does Islam require this dichotomy? Do we need to leave the scientific examination of the world at home while we go to the mosque?
Well, I would say that the biggest problem of Islam with non-Muslims, and especially with the Christians of that time, was that because there was absolutely no conflict between faith and science,
the Quran is actually inviting the human mind to examine the Quran itself for the benefit of acquiring knowledge. Would you agree with that statement?
Of course, and it's about the Quran, and it's also about the hadith. So it is the Quran, and once again we speak about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was enjoining people to knowledge, and he would even say to people around him at that time, and to us at the same time, to seek knowledge even unto China. I mean, even if they should travel to China, they had to seek knowledge. He also told us that on the day of judgment, we would be required to answer about what we did of our time, if we exploited it in order to get knowledge, and what we did with our knowledge, and if we transmitted the knowledge. And it's not just about acquiring knowledge. We are supposed to learn, and we are supposed to transmit. And this is also summarized in the وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. I mean, with what has been bestowed upon you by Allah, you have to talk, you have to transmit. You don't have the right to keep everything for yourself.
Yes.
And yes, it's very important. I mean, it's not just acquiring knowledge as putting money in a coffer and put it aside.
Yeah.
You have to transmit money and transmit knowledge at the same time. It's at a certain level the same kind of transmission. We must not keep it.
It's something of value, yes.
For ourselves.
Yeah, I concur.
Yeah.
The Quran says, and I'll read the verse for my audience. When it's said to them, when it's said to them, come to what Allah has revealed, come to the messenger, they say, enough for us are the ways we found our fathers following. What, even though their fathers were void of knowledge and guidance. This is an interesting dichotomy that's being created, and again, putting the emphasis on the importance of knowledge and not receiving information from your ancestors, so to speak, that you can take that information and assess it and put it in relationship to the acquisition of real knowledge. You can find out what's true and determine what's true, rather than just inherit a bunch of information from people like my great uncles, who I used to sit and listen to for hours, and they would tell me a whole bunch of stories that had no basis in the modern world whatsoever. So would you say that this verse speaks to the value of knowledge?
Of course, and I feel in this verse that there is a kind of intellectual dynamic, because when Allah tells you about your ancestors, yes, in the future generations will be addressed to the same way about us, to always seek knowledge and more knowledge, because knowledge makes us reach a better level, and each time we look for it, we have a better understanding of the universe, of what has been created by Allah, and it makes us also understand the reason why we are supposed to worship him, because when we realize the value, the greatness of the creation of Allah, we understand. I mean, it's a kind of worshiping, because we worship him through knowledge. I mean, this is something that I understood through the Quran. I mean, you just don't read. I mean, read and then put back the Quran in your library. You have to read it in order to understand its content, in order to work with the content and get a better understanding of the world that's around you. I mean, at the smallest level and at the biggest level. And the more you understand the universe, the more you worship Allah, because subhanallah, it's so great. It's you know, I was a very bad pupil in mathematics. I just I mean, I had problems with mathematics. I really was not proud of myself. If the teachers had explained to me that with mathematics I could understand the creation of Allah, that if with physics I would understand the creation of Allah, I would certainly have been a very good pupil and I would have had great scores. But they taught us mathematics as something abstract. They did not link it to religion. Even though at that time I was in a Catholic school here in Paris, they didn't link it to the creation of God. Except once during my course of physics, I asked questions and the teacher was unable to answer to me. And then he said, forget it, you will not get it. I mean, you want to understand it. I said, no, I want to understand. And then he told me something that really remained in my mind until now. He told me, you know, the universe as you see it, the shapes that you can see and the colors that you can see are just limited in this world, because in the other world there are other shapes and other colors. And when he said that there were other shapes, I said, is it possible to that there exist other shapes? And this is through sayings like that I understand whatever is scientific. And I believe that it's with sciences that we understand Allah, and that it's with Allah that we understand sciences. I mean, this is how I feel it.
I think that is a marvelous story. I can only say that I started to develop an appreciation for algebra when I understood that Muslims had made this huge contribution to it. I mean, essentially inventing algebra altogether. And so I said, this must be terrific. So I went to study it with more zeal, you know, because you kind of owned it a little bit, you know what I mean? And so it did improve my education on doing algebra. I did make an A, by the way. Thank you. The Quran also says that the word of thou Lord does find its fulfillment in truth and in justice. None can change his words, for he is the one who hears and knows all. It further says that were thou to follow the common run of those on earth, they will lead thee away from the way of Allah. They only follow nothing but conjecture, and they do nothing but lie. This is two Quranic verses. I found it very interesting how those verses juxtapose the acquisition of truth and injustice, and not get involved with conjecture and lying. The requirement to know what's right and true is directing our thinking in those two verses, I think. In ways that are very unusual for religious scriptures to do. Tell me, you read the two verses. What are your thoughts?
I'm going to tell you something. is the story of my life.
Uh-huh.
It's all about the story of my life during these last 25 or 30 years. Because as I was reading the Quran, I was wondering about the natives of America once again.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked some scholars. And the word scholar is in Arabic is alam, ulama, 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 with it's in its plural form.
Yes.
And if you change the position of the alphabet of the donc amala, ulama, wa umala. So from the word scholar, you jump into the word that means that you are a puppet, that you are a valet. That it's amazing because this is the Arabic language. Because if you speak about the ulama, then the ulama are supposed to understand the content of the Quran, and the ulama are supposed to know that if Al-Quran has been revealed to Al-Ins, Al-Wan and Al-Jinn, Al-Alamain, it means the two words, that of the unseen and the visible world. So how come, as scholars, you put aside the peoples of America? And I got in touch with certain famous scholars that I'm not going to name, and who told me with the wave of the hand, this is, there's absolutely no proof that any message reached the Americas. I said, it's just impossible. Allah says that this message, this revelation is for Al-Alamain. How can you say that it didn't reach the Americas? It means that you are in fact copying the Christians who believed that the ocean was, that the earth was flat, and that if you navigate in the Atlantic Ocean, you would reach the void, and you would fall into the void. Just like the Greeks, in fact, believed that it was the realm of the dead and that they shouldn't go too far in the ocean.
Interesting.
So I told them, there's something missing. It's a kind of respect for the peoples of America. Do you mean that Allah forgot them? Do you mean that we have to accept the so-called discovery of America as having taken place in 1492? And that Allah did not, ignored the peoples of America as the Europeans were ignoring them? And it was like a shock for them to hear me talking like that, because I considered that given that Allah told me that I could discuss his text, then I could discuss their text and their points of views. And I discovered at that time that there were conjectures and that there were lies, and that most scholars, unfortunately, were just thinking about their position in universities or in the society, and that they did not take into consideration the Quran, that they took from it what was important for their life, for their positions, and that they put aside whatever would bother their bosses or their superiors in universities or in any organization, Muslim organization or intellectual organization, like institutions specialized in archaeology, anthropology, or any other field. So I started questioning their understanding of the Quran. Even though I consider myself as being ignorant, I consider that they were even